Tonight, we are entering one of the most unsettling stories in the book of Joshua, the story of Israel's first defeat after Jericho. They were winning. They had crossed the Jordan. They had seen the walls of Jericho collapse. They seemed to be moving forward under a promise larger than any army could explain. And then, before a smaller city called Ai, everything suddenly broke. The question guiding this story is simple, but it grows darker as we follow it. How could Israel be winning under Joshua, only to collapse before a smaller city because one man broke the rule and hid what was forbidden? This is not only a story about a lost battle, it is a story about a secret carried out of a ruined city, a command ignored in the dust of victory, and a hidden object buried beneath a tent. It is a story about what happens when the danger is not standing in front of the camp with weapons, but lying under the ground in the middle of the camp itself. To understand the weight of this moment, we have to enter the world of Joshua slowly. Israel is not yet a settled kingdom with palaces, dynasties, and a temple in Jerusalem. They are a people moving into a land they believe God has promised them. Led by Joshua after the death of Moses, their life is shaped by covenant, by commands, by sacred boundaries, and by the belief that their survival depends not only on strength, but on the presence of God among them. Joshua himself stands at a dangerous turning point. Moses, the great prophet who led Israel out of Egypt and through the wilderness, is gone. Joshua now carries the burden of leading the people into the land. He is not merely commanding soldiers. He is guiding a community that believes its future depends on obedience, memory, and trust in the God who brought them this far. Jericho had seemed to prove that presence. Its walls had fallen, not by ordinary siege warfare, but through a strange act of obedience. Priests, trumpets, marching, silence, and a final shout. But Joshua 7 opens with a shadow over that victory. The biblical text tells us that Israel had acted unfaithfully concerning the devoted things, the things placed under a sacred ban, things not to be taken as private treasure. And one man, ACHAN of the tribe of Judah, had taken some of them. At first, no one in the camp seems to know. The tents still stand, the fires still burn, the soldiers still prepare for the next movement. Joshua still looks toward the next city, but beneath one tent, under the packed earth, something forbidden is waiting. And before Israel can move forward, that buried secret will stop them. The dust of Jericho had not yet fully settled. Stones lay broken where walls had stood. Smoke rose from a city that had become the first great sign of Israel's entrance into the land. For the people watching from the camp, Jericho was more than a military victory. It was proof that the God who had led them through wilderness and a river had not abandoned them at the edge of the promise. But Jericho was never presented as a city to be looted freely. The biblical text gives the victory a sacred boundary. Certain things were not to be taken for personal gain. The silver, the gold, and vessels of bronze and iron were to be placed in the treasury of the Lord. Other things in the city were under a severe command of destruction, a command that belongs to the ancient and difficult world of Joshua, where war, judgment, and sacred devotion are bound together in ways modern readers often find hard to hear. For viewers hearing this story for the first time, this detail matters. In the story, Jericho is not treated like an ordinary defeated city. It is treated as a city placed under a sacred order. Some of its valuables are not trophies for soldiers to divide. They belong to the treasury of the Lord. The victory itself has a boundary around it, as if Israel is being told that the first city in the land must not become a test of greed. For the story, what matters is clear. Jericho was not simply a prize, it was a test. Israel had been told that the victory belonged to God before it belonged to them. They could walk through the ruins, but they could not treat everything they saw as theirs to possess. And this is where the crack begins. The Bible names the man ACHAN, son of Carmi, from the tribe of Judah. It does not pause to describe his childhood, his private thoughts, or the long history of his desires. The text is much more direct later when he confesses. He says that he saw among the spoil a beautiful robe from Shinar, silver, and a bar of gold. He saw, he desired, he took, he hid. Those four movements are enough to shape the tragedy. Imagine the city after battle, the heat of fire, the scrape of stone, the smell of ash, the noise of people moving through ruins that only hours earlier had stood as a wall of fear. Somewhere in that wreckage, ACHAN sees what he is not supposed to take, a garment beautiful enough to catch the eye, silver with real weight, gold that could change the way a man looked at his own future. The mention of the robe gives the scene a strange texture. It is not only metal that catches ACHAN's attention, it is beauty. A robe from Shinar, a name that points eastward toward older lands and distant wealth, in the ashes of a condemned city. There is something elegant enough to survive the violence around it. The object seems almost out of place. Soft fabric among stone, smoke, and ruin. The story does not tell us exactly what passed through his mind. We should not invent certainty where the text gives silence, but the action itself is vivid. A hand reaches toward what has already been forbidden. A man carries it away. He brings it into the camp, into the ordinary space of family and sleep and daily life, and buries it beneath the ground inside his tent. From the outside, nothing may have looked different. The camp of Israel still stretched beneath the sky. The people still carried the memory of Jericho's walls falling. Joshua still had the burden of leadership on his shoulders. The elders still had reason to believe the next step would follow the first. But under one tent, the victory was no longer clean. That is the disturbing power of Joshua 7. The danger does not arrive first as an army. It arrives as something hidden. A victory that looked complete from a distance had been fractured from within. What had been placed under sacred command had been treated like private property, and what belonged in the open before God had been pushed beneath the earth. The visual center of the story is not yet the battlefield at Ai. It is the tent. It is the soil. It is the silver underneath. It is the strange silence of buried things. And while that secret remains hidden, Israel begins to move forward as though nothing has changed. After Jericho, the next target is Ai, compared with Jericho. Ai does not enter the story with the same heavy shadow. Jericho had been a walled city, a symbol of the land's resistance. a place Israel could not simply walk into by courage alone. Ai appears smaller, less intimidating, almost like the next logical step after a great beginning. Joshua sends men to spy it out. This is practical leadership before sending soldiers into battle. He wants to know what they are facing. The spies go up, look over the city, and return with confidence. Their report is simple. Not all the people need to go. 2,000 or 3,000 men should be enough. The people of Ai are few. It is easy to understand why that report would sound reasonable. Israel has just seen Jericho fall. Their confidence is high. The road ahead seems open if the great city collapsed. Why should a smaller city create fear? There is a human truth in this moment. After a great victory, people often begin to believe that the next step will be easier. The first obstacle was massive, and it fell. The second looks smaller, so it feels almost automatic. Israel does not yet know that the danger is no longer measured by the size of the walls in front of them. So about 3,000 men go up. The scene should feel calm at first, almost routine. Soldiers move out from the camp, perhaps still carrying the memory of Jericho like a fire inside them. They are not marching toward a legendary wall now. They are moving toward what seems like a manageable fight. The viewer can feel the confidence before the break. Then the story turns suddenly. The men of Ai strike them. Israel does not advance. Israel runs. The biblical text says about 36 men are killed, and the rest are chased from before the gate. It is not the largest number of deaths in the history of war, but in the story, the number is not the main point. The shock is spiritual and emotional. A people who had watched Jericho collapse now flee from a smaller city. The image is painful because it reverses the mood of everything before it. A few moments earlier, Israel's future seemed to be opening. Now the soldiers are running down from Ai with fear behind them. Dust rises again, but this time it is not the dust of a fallen enemy city. It is the dust of retreat. The text gives one of its most haunting images. The hearts of the people melted and became like water. That phrase matters. It is not only a description of fear, it is a reversal. Earlier in the larger story of Joshua, the fear of Israel had fallen on others. The nations had heard what Israel's God had done, and their courage had melted. Now Israel feels that same collapse inside itself. The people who were supposed to be moving forward suddenly feel their own strength draining away. This is where Ai becomes more than a location on a map. It becomes the place where confidence breaks. Israel does not yet know why. Joshua does not yet know why. The soldiers who ran may only know the terror of being turned back, the shock of seeing men fall, the shame of retreat after a miracle. And the question becomes unavoidable. If Jericho fell, why did Ai stand? A simple military explanation would not be enough for the world of this story. Yes, the spies may have underestimated the city. Yes, perhaps sending only part of the force seemed too confident. But Joshua 7 pulls the reader deeper than tactics. It tells us from the beginning that the defeat is tied to something hidden in the camp. The battlefield is only where the buried secret becomes visible. That is why the defeat feels so disturbing. Israel is not losing because Ai is greater than Jericho. They are losing because something has gone wrong between the people and the God they believe is leading them. The power that carried them through the Jordan and around Jericho cannot be treated like a weapon they control. The soldiers return with fear. The camp receives the news. The mood changes. The memory of Jericho no longer feels simple. If Israel can fall here, before I, then the whole future suddenly trembles. What will happen when the larger kings hear? What will happen when the nations gather? What will happen if the presence that gave victory is no longer with them? The hidden objects remain under the tent, and above them, the entire camp begins to shake. Joshua's response is not the response of a general merely disappointed by a failed tactic. He does not only count the dead and plan the next formation. He tears his clothes. He falls face down before the ark of the Lord and remains there until evening. The elders of Israel are with him, and they put dust on their heads. The image is still and heavy. The ark stands as the sacred sign of God's covenant presence among Israel. It is not a magical object, not a simple symbol of victory to be carried wherever human beings want success. In Israel's story, it represents the holy nearness of the God who brought them out, commanded them, judged them, and promised to be with them. For a broad audience, the ark may need a moment of orientation. It is the sacred chest associated with Israel's covenant, the visible sign at the center of their worship and identity during this period. It is not a throne in the ordinary sense, but in the story, it marks the place where Israel understands God's presence among them when Joshua falls before it. He is not performing empty ritual. He is bringing the crisis to the center of Israel's relationship with God. Joshua lies before it in confusion. His prayer reveals the depth of his fear. He wonders why Israel was brought across the Jordan only to be handed over to their enemies. He worries that the Canaanites and all the people of the land will hear what happened, surround Israel, and cut off their name from the earth. He is afraid not only for the army, but for the future of the people and the honor of the God whose name is tied to them. This is one reason the story remains powerful. Joshua does not yet know what the narrator has already told us. He does not know about the robe, the silver, the gold, or the earth inside ACHAN's tent. From where Joshua stands, the situation looks like abandonment. It looks like the promise itself may be in danger. There is a deep loneliness in this scene. Joshua has inherited Moses' burden, but he does not have Moses beside him. He has seen miracles, but now he sees dead soldiers and frightened people. He has led the first great victory, but before he can settle into confidence, he is on the ground with dust on his head, asking why the story has turned so quickly. But the answer he receives does not allow him to stay on the ground. The Lord tells Joshua to stand up. The problem is not that God has forgotten Israel. The problem is that Israel has sinned. They have violated the covenant. They have taken some of the devoted things. They have stolen, lied, and put those things among their own possessions. The words cut through the fog of Joshua's fear. He has been looking toward Ai, toward the Canaanites, toward the threat beyond the camp, but the answer turns him around. The danger is not first outside Israel. It is inside. It has been carried into the camp, hidden among ordinary possessions, buried where no human eye was meant to see. This is the turning point of the documentary. The defeat at Ai is no longer a mystery of military failure. It becomes a revelation. Israel could not stand before its enemies because something forbidden had been placed in its midst. For a modern viewer, this may feel strange or severe. The world of Joshua is an ancient covenant world, where Israel's identity is not built around isolated individuals alone, but around a people bound together before God. In that world, a hidden act can become a public wound. The text does not present ACHAN's choice as a small, private mistake. It presents it as a breach in the sacred order under which Israel is trying to live. This is not a simple idea, and the story does not soften it. In Joshua 7, the community is treated as a covenant people, not merely as separate private lives standing side by side. What is buried in one tent can affect the whole camp, because the camp itself is bound together before God. The hidden thing is private in location, but not private in consequence. And that is the tension Joshua must now carry. He came before the ark, asking why Israel had fallen. He rises with a harder task. He must uncover what Israel has hidden. The instructions are solemn. The people must consecrate themselves. In the morning, they will be brought forward, tribe by tribe, clan by clan, family by family, man by man. The pace of the story slows. The camera, in our imagination, begins to move from the whole camp toward one narrowing point. Thousands of tents, many tribes, families standing in silence, a secret under the ground. Joshua now knows there is something hidden, but he does not yet know whose tent holds it. And the night before the search must have felt very long. Morning arrives over the camp with a different kind of fear. This is not the fear of Ai's soldiers charging from a gate. This is quieter. It moves through the people as they gather, knowing that something in their midst has brought disaster, but not yet knowing where it will be found. Joshua brings Israel forward by tribes. The tribe of Judah is taken. Then the clan of the Zerahites is taken. Then the family of Zimri is taken. Then, from that narrowing circle, ACHAN is taken. The structure of the scene is almost unbearable in its patience. The story could have named him immediately, as the opening verse did for the reader, but instead, the public discovery unfolds step by step. The whole people watch the circle close. What was hidden beneath one tent is now being exposed before every tribe. For animation, this scene can move like a slow tightening of space. At first, we see the whole camp beneath the morning light. Then one tribe steps forward, then one clan, then one household. Faces change, breathing slows. The sound of the camp seems to disappear until the story stands before one man. Joshua speaks to ACHAN, and his words carry both seriousness and sorrow. He tells him to give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and to tell what he has done. There is no room left for concealment. The earth has covered the objects, but it cannot cover the truth. ACHAN confesses. His words are simple and devastating. He says that he sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. He saw among the spoil a beautiful robe from Shinar, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels. He coveted them and took them. They are hidden in the earth inside his tent, with the silver underneath. The confession gives the story its most visual detail: a robe from Shinar, a name associated with the lands of Mesopotamia, far away and rich with ancient memory, silver measured by weight, a bar of gold, not vague treasure, but specific things, things seen, desired, carried, buried. The order of his confession also matters. He saw, he coveted, he took, he hid. The story does not need a long speech to show the path from desire to disaster. It is almost painfully simple. What began with sight became possession, and what became possession had to be concealed. And then the messengers run. That detail matters. They do not walk slowly. The story says they run to the tent. The pace suddenly changes from ceremonial narrowing to urgent confirmation. The camp waits. Joshua waits. ACHAN's words hang in the air, and inside the tent, beneath the earth, the objects are exactly where he said they would be. The messengers dig them up, the robe, the silver, the gold. They bring them to Joshua and to all the people of Israel, and they lay them out before the Lord. This is the moment the secret becomes visible. What had been buried in private is now placed in public. What had been taken from a ruined city is now set before the whole community as the explanation for their defeat. The battlefield at Ai and the ground beneath ACHAN's tent are finally connected. In animation. This scene should not need loud music or exaggerated drama. Its force is in the quiet, the earth opening, the glint of silver, the garment pulled from darkness, faces watching, Joshua standing between the people and the objects that stopped their advance. There is something chilling about how ordinary the objects must have looked once they were laid out. A robe, silver, gold, things that human beings have desired in many times and places. Yet in this story, they carry the weight of a broken command. They are not powerful because they are magical. They are powerful because they represent a boundary crossed and then hidden. The story does not invite us to imagine ACHAN as a monster. It shows us something more unsettling, a man who saw, wanted, took, and hid. The simplicity of the sequence is part of its power. A disaster large enough to shake a nation began with a private moment of desire. But the story does not end with confession. In Joshua 7, exposure is not the same as resolution. The objects have been found, but the breach still has to be answered. The ancient text moves toward judgment, and it does so with a severity that modern readers often find difficult. That difficulty should not be softened into something it is not. The biblical story is serious about the sacred command at Jericho. It is serious about the communal consequences of ACHAN's act. It is serious about the danger of carrying the forbidden thing into the center of the camp and pretending that life can continue unchanged. The secret under the tent has been brought into the light. Now Israel must go to the valley where the trouble will be named. ACHAN is taken to the valley of Achor. The objects are taken there too. The robe, the silver, the gold. The biblical text also includes his household, his animals, his tent, and all that belonged to him. It is a heavy and difficult scene, and it should be treated with restraint. This is not a moment for spectacle. It is a moment where the ancient story brings its judgment into the open. Joshua asks ACHAN a question that gives the valley its meaning. Why have you brought trouble on us? The name Achor is connected with trouble, and the place becomes a memory carved into the land itself. What began as something hidden beneath a tent ends in a valley with a name that remembers the cost. The punishment described in the text is severe. For many modern viewers, this is the hardest part of the story. It belongs to the ancient covenant world of Joshua, where the devoted things from Jericho were treated with fearful seriousness, and where Achan's act was not framed as a private theft alone, but as a violation that placed the whole people in danger. A careful documentary should not turn away from that difficulty, but it should not exploit it either. The point is not to linger over violence. The point is to understand what the story is saying through the weight of the scene. Israel cannot carry the forbidden thing forward and still pretend to walk under the same protection. The hidden breach must be brought to an end before the people can move again. In this sense, the valley of Achor becomes the opposite of Achan's tent. The tent was private, covered, enclosed, and hidden. The valley is open, exposed, and remembered. What Achan buried under the ground is now brought into a place where the whole community must face what has happened. After the judgment, the story says the fierce anger turns away. The camp can breathe again, but not as it breathed before. Something has been learned that cannot be unlearned. Jericho's victory remains real, but it no longer feels simple. Ai's defeat remains painful, but it now has an explanation. The Valley of Achor stands as the final image of Joshua 7. It is not a palace, not a throne room, not a battlefield filled with glory. It is a valley of trouble, a place where buried objects, broken command, public fear, and sacred judgment all meet. And this is where the story widens. Joshua 7 is not only about one man's greed, it is about the danger of assuming that yesterday's victory can cover today's disobedience. It is about the hidden fracture that no one wants to name. It is about a community discovering that the thing weakening them is not always the enemy in front of them. Sometimes it is the thing they have allowed to remain buried inside the camp. For Israel, the road into the land will continue. Ai will not be the end of their story. Joshua will lead again. The people will move again. But after Achor, they cannot pretend that victory is automatic. They cannot treat the presence of God as a tool in their hands. They cannot step over the buried thing and call it faith. The next movements of Israel's story will carry the memory of this valley. The people will still face cities, kings, alliances, fear, and battle. But Joshua 7 has placed a warning at the beginning of their journey into the land. The enemy outside the walls is not the only danger. There is also the danger of what is hidden after victory. When the heart becomes careless because the walls have already fallen, the valley remembers what the camp tried not to see, and that memory gives the story its quiet, lasting force. The story of Achan and Ai begins with a question that feels almost military. Why did Israel lose a battle they expected to win, but by the end? The answer has moved far beyond strategy. Israel did not fall because Ai was greater than Jericho. They fell because a hidden act had opened a crack inside the people themselves. Joshua 7 leaves us with images that are hard to forget. The smoke of Jericho, the confidence of the spies, soldiers running from Ai, Joshua face down before the ark, and a tent where forbidden things lay buried beneath the earth. The story moves from public victory to private desire. from hidden theft to public defeat, from confusion to exposure, from a nameless secret to a valley named Trouble. It is a severe story, and not an easy one. It comes from an ancient world shaped by covenant, sacred command, communal responsibility, and the belief that holiness could not be treated casually. But even across that distance, its narrative power remains clear. The danger was not only outside the camp, it was inside, hidden under the ground, waiting to be revealed. And perhaps that is why this story appears so soon after Jericho. The Bible places it right after one of Israel's greatest victories, as if to say that triumph can be dangerous when it makes people stop listening. The walls may fall, the enemy may flee, the future may seem open, but if something forbidden is carried into the heart of the camp and buried there, the next step forward may become impossible. There is a quiet human truth beneath the ancient severity of the story. What is hidden does not always stay harmless. What is buried does not always stay silent. A thing can be covered by earth, by routine, by victory, by public confidence, and still shape the path of everything that follows. So the final image is not Jericho's fallen wall. It is the valley of Achor, quiet beneath the sky, holding the memory of trouble. A place where Israel learned that what is hidden does not disappear, that victory can be interrupted by a secret, and that the path forward sometimes begins only after the buried thing is brought into the light.